Hello and welcome to Recruiter 360 TV with me, Toby Babb, and delighted to be joined today by Tara Lescott. Tara, how are you? Great to see you. Thanks for coming in. So Tara is the founder of Recruiter Republic and Rec to Rec Secrets, forming a brilliant business. And tell us a little bit more about your background and where you've come from and where you are now.
Oh, it's a long story.
We're ready for you.
Okay, so I started off life in recruitment with Hayes back in 1997.
Yep.
And I started off as a building services and FM recruiter.
Where it was all happening.
Out of Cambridge, where it wasn't happening at all, it was more to the point. But yeah, and I guess I started off life as a perm and temp dual desk recruiter.
Yeah.
But really identified as a perm recruiter and kind of built my career with Hayes when they were a little bit more entrepreneurial than they are now. And gradually worked my way up into management, senior management, group director. And then left there in 2010 to then launch Recruiter Republic.
Yeah, and that's been going from strength to strength, right?
Yeah, so Recruiter Republic, I started off with this mission that I wanted to change the world of Rec to Rec. I thought it was pretty rubbish and it wasn't done very well and stuff like that. But I had a massive crash in that first year when I realised it was a lot more complicated than it looked from the outside. So I had a pretty traumatic first year figuring out how to do this thing differently.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone had really done that before and stopped to take the time out. And it led to some pretty big discoveries that made me design a very different system. So although we call ourselves a Rec to Rec, because that's what people that's what people recognise. Yes, too many recs in that sentence. It doesn't work like other Rec to Recs work, so it's fairly unique. But along that way, 7 years in, and all the work that we've done, and we've won a few awards as well. We're not the only one. We just got to this point where I found myself spending more and more time actually coaching my clients and consulting my clients, and sort of trying to help them develop their own strategies, not just us find them people, but actually help them with their own strategies. And I just found myself spending more and more time on that stuff.
Yeah.
And realised I need a way to sort of help people that isn't just one-to-one all the time, because it just limits the impact you can have, which is what led to then the book and Rec to Rec Secrets and all these other things.
So that's where we got this here, available from Amazon and all good bookstores.
Yes.
So where did all the good recruiters go? Tell us a little bit about the title behind it, because this is basically exactly what you've talked about. You're opening the kimono on exactly what you're doing, and it's a brilliant read. It's really easy to follow. It's got some great common sense that can be turned into common practice behind it. It's got physical examples all the way through it. Something you've obviously put loads of time, effort, and passion into, and that sort of really screams out when you're reading it. But the title itself, where did all the good recruiters go? Tell us a little bit more about the thought process behind that.
Well, do you know what? I struggled with the title for ages. Yeah. And if you look at most business books, they're very formulaic. They're very 7 steps, how to. And actually, I struggled with that for ages and realised I would just go with the thing that I get asked the most. So pretty much any client that I meet for the first time, I just don't make good recruiters anymore. Where have the good ones gone? You know. And I just decided, well, look, if that is the main purpose of the book, is to answer this burning question all the time, this belief that there aren't any good recruiters out there, then I'll just call it that. So
works.
I haven't got a big sexy story for you, I'm afraid, but I just thought, look, that's the one question I get asked all the time.
And that's what you do in it here. You sort of dispel the myths and behind it all about where recruiters are and that they won't leave and all that sort of stuff behind it. But before we go into a little bit of that, the whole concept there of good recruiters, let's start with actually what that looks like. We've both been in the industry for a while now, and I'm sure both having been in big brands have seen the good, the bad, and the ugly behind it. What do you see as a good recruiter? What's good look like to you if you were to sort of badge?
Do you know what? I think it looks different for lots of different people, actually, and I think
industries
and I think it can look differently for each sectors. I think it's about, more than anything, is understanding what good is to you. And actually, the alarming thing for me is most companies I go and meet,
yeah,
and I say, what is a good recruiter to you? They can't answer it.
yeah,
Or if they do, it's not consistent across the company.
yeah.
So the worrying thing about that is if you don't actually know what you want and you
Who
have
you
to
wanna
find
be,
it,
yeah.
how do you ever find it?
Yeah.
So for me, it's about that. My personal belief is about a few things. I think persistence and resilience are two of the key things you've got to have in spades, or it won't work.
Yeah.
But I just think really good questioning and listening skills. I think recruitment can be taught to most people. I think it's half art, half science.
Yeah.
Most people are a bit biased one way or the other.
Yeah.
As long as they are trained or coached to balance the side that they're weaker on, they'll be a good recruiter.
I mean, that's something that comes through very clearly in the book, isn't it? That there is a coachable way of doing the job. There's a formula to it. You know, you look at any sort of high performance environment, be it recruitment, you know, sport, business, military, whatever it might be. There is a pattern to doing well at the job, and in this, there is an absolute pattern to doing well at the job. But classic 20-80, etc., 80-20. 20% of the people will do really well at it, and 80% won't be quite so strong at the job. You know, going from all right to terrible.
Yeah.
So, what do you see as the sort of principles behind or themes behind people who don't necessarily? Because you know, you quite proudly sort of talk about dealing with that top 5% of that top 20%. That's who you want to work with, right? So, what are the differences between those people who get those processes, and you say can get taught, and the other people then who won't?
Well, some people are coachable and some aren't. You know, and it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And I think there are some very simple ways to uncover that when you're with somebody, because they show really obvious signs really early in a conversation as to whether they're receptive and they'll consider and they'll think, or they block away and they become defensive.
Yeah.
You know, they're very early signals that you can detect as to whether someone can take something on board and do something with it. So I think if you start right at that funnel of development with a potential consultant, the coachability factor has to be there, or you're never going to change them. And I think one of our biggest problems as an industry is we've got no template for what this looks like. Okay?
In terms of?
For what recruiting good recruiters looks like.
Yeah.
We actually have trouble defining it because we've never been taught it. We've been taught how to do the recruitment that we do, which is finance or technology or banking or construction.
Yeah.
But who ever taught us how to recruit recruiters?
Yeah.
No one. We've got our own personal experience of when we were trainees back in the day, and for me that's a long time ago now. Or it's just trial and error, very costly trial and error. And most of us are time poor. We haven't got the time to sit and figure it out. We've got business as usual to deal with. So most people never get underneath it and just break it apart and just think about it and figure out what works, you know, because recruiters are very different to any other type of candidate.
You've had that exactly, haven't you? You've worked in different marketplaces, you've seen different things, and actually now made a success of this industry. What have been the sort of the common themes you've seen about identifying that, you know, good people within that, or how have you transitioned, I guess, to be good at both?
By just having a horrible crash in year one.
Yeah.
So year one, I was full of this kind of, I'm going to change the world of rec to rec, you know, because I'd seen the other side of it. You know, I'd tried to be the candidate and the client, and thought it was pretty shocking. You know, so my experience was largely candidates sent to me that are on a job board somewhere without their CV added to, without being met, half the time wouldn't even turn up for an interview. Looks pretty ropey. And then the very few that even might be passable would, you know, that's just minimal results. And as a candidate, getting someone to actually understand what you do and make sensible suggestions for you rather than try and impose a job on you, just wasn't there. So I was full of like vim and vigour year one, going, right, I'm going to change the world of rec to rec. Someone needs to do this properly. And I was completely unprepared for how big the need was from clients and how thirsty they all were for someone to help them. So I was overwhelmed.
Even in 2010 when the market was moving backwards,
mid-recession, so I was completely unprepared for how much that was going to sort of come at me like a tsunami. And I was also completely unprepared for how complicated recruiters are themselves once they become a candidate. And I think I was too idealistic. I expected them to respect me because they're a recruiter.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't possibly mess me around. They wouldn't possibly.
Yeah.
But actually they do. And I sulked for a little while on that. But actually when I started to break it down and actually speak to people and interview them and get underneath it, you just realised actually you can't recruit them and manage them the same way you would another candidate.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. So your expectations are all wrong from the start and they're full of fear.
Yeah.
So unless you take the fear away, unless you make
fear
it easy,
from
fear that their boss is going to find out, fear that they're going to make it worse by going to another company with the same issues, fear that they're going to get swept along with something they're not ready for. It's full of fear, a recruiter, because they're working long hours. They sit next to their boss in an open plan office 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
So how can you speak to them during the day?
Yeah.
Without their boss being aware of it.
And you've had to really sort of work to...
There's just a lot that you've got to deal with
Yeah,
that it just
parts.
isn't there and wasn't there in any other type of recruitment that I'd done before.
Yeah.
So I literally had to sort of throw away everything I knew, apart from the empathy of I know what it's like to be a recruiter.
Yeah.
I know what it's like to manage recruiters.
Yeah.
That bit to help me connect and build rapport, fine. But everything else I had to completely
Well, it probably
redesign.
comes straight back to the fundamentals, the sort of very core base fundamentals of the job, which isn't it? Which you spoke about there is empathy, which is probably one of the key things to look at in a hire. But then also the ability to and I think this is something which comes through from this as well, is to really understand what the needs are of that particular client and that particular candidate. So you look at, we held an event last week which looked at a company called Baringa, one of the best places to work in the UK, and it was asked a question. The question was asked, what makes a good recruitment consultant to you as a client? And their answer was someone who genuinely understands the brief. Yeah. And I think if when you're talking about that in recruitment terms, that's got to be even more pronounced, right?
Yeah, because they won't suffer fools.
Because it's less formulaic on skills and more about the person. Is that,
Yeah, and if you think about it, if a recruiter's getting ready to explore other options, they're usually feeling unloved, unappreciated, undervalued, a bit isolated. They need to feel good. Yeah. They need to feel understood. Yeah. And they need to feel excited about what their prospects are. Yeah. And if they don't get that, they won't take action. Yeah.
And that's what you see as some of the biggest reasons for people moving on.
The biggest reasons for people to move jobs as a recruiter, number one by far is how they're managed. Yeah. Their relationship with their manager is the number one reason that people talk to us about. Yeah. It can be disguised though. So we all say each recruiter's like an individual onion. Like you've got to peel these layers back to get to the real issue. And quite often they present other issues initially because it's the most recent thing that's sent them over the edge to the point of going, I need to make a move. Yeah. But the reality is when you peel it back, which only comes if you can bond and have credibility with them and spend time with them, you get to the real issue. Yeah. So you can't really present options and give them solutions until you've done that bit. Otherwise you think you're giving them what they want, but you're not.
You're not necessarily unless you're there and gone a bit deeper. And that then comes through, I guess, as well to the other side of what you do, which is ensuring you put people into the right environments, which I think you've also been quite vocal about saying. You want to put them into companies there that you feel are the right homes for the right people. Yeah. What does a great home look like in recruitment?
I think it's different for each person. So I think that's what we built our whole model on, was we get to know the person first and then figure out for them what the right options are. And options for us mean company rather than vacancy. Yeah. Right, because all of the companies we work with create things for people if they're good people. Yeah.
So it's less of a brief per position, isn't it? Yeah.
We got lots of them, but you could sit managing vacancies all day in my world. It wouldn't get you anything done. Yeah. But what we like to do is get to know lots of companies and understand exactly what they're about and warts and all, what do they offer somebody and what's good, what's bad, what's emerging, what's changing about that company. So then once you peel back the layers of the onion with this recruiter and you get to the heart of what they need and what they want and how they want to feel differently, it's actually quite easy to go, well, in that environment, you are going to absolutely blossom. Yeah. But in this environment, it would be the opposite.
It's a really interesting thing, that, isn't it? Because I've kind of I never saw that at the start. You know, if you thought there was someone bad there, you know, I was in a pretty aggressive environment in my first company, and it's, you know, for me that was fine. You know, I thrived in that. I liked the pressure of it. I liked the stress that went with that sort of stuff. But there were people there who I saw leave and go on to other companies who were, you know, seen as awful in our business, that went on to have really successful careers in recruitment and still are in it and still doing really well. And it made me thought when we started this, that how do we make sure that we're not bullying effectively the wrong people out of a business who could be the right person for it. So I think there's an element of being able to adapt as a company to individual types of people as well. Yeah. Do you see companies doing that well?
Some.
Yeah.
Not many actually, because I do think still as a industry, we are a little bit fixed. Yeah. We're fixed on a lot of things compared to most other industries. Yeah. How we work, where we work, the hours we work, you know, we are fairly set in our ways. Yeah. So you do see some that are a bit more forward thinking, but I think there is a fear. There is a fear that if you let people work from home and work the hours they want, where does your profit go? You know, because we're not in a business that has a product on a shelf. Yeah. Our only value is our people, and if we can't see what they're doing and we're not around to support them, what is happening? Is it going wrong? Yeah. And quite often we don't know till it's gone wrong. Yeah. So there is a fear about letting that go. Yeah. But I think you can do steps. Yeah. You know, I think one of the biggest problems that most companies actually have is they don't change how they see that person. They don't let that person reinvent themselves as they go through their career. Yeah. So it's very easy, for argument's sake, if you take on graduate trainees, to forever see them as that little trainee. Yeah. Yeah. How do they develop and grow and... But one of the biggest things that they have, those guys between sort of year 1 and year 3, they are the ones that are in need of a change and a move the most. They're the ones that disconnect most forcibly. Yeah. They go in search of something quite different when they do move. Yeah. But the biggest thing they get out of the move is the chance to reinvent. Yeah. No one saw them as the trainee messing up. No one saw them as the girl that came in the ill-fitting suit and the bad hair because she was skint when she joined, or the guy that broke up with his girlfriend 3 times in year 1 and was a nightmare but has now grown up. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. They get to leave that behind. Well, people develop at all sorts of stages, isn't it? I look at some people who I work with, 10, 15, 20 years ago, and where they are now is a completely different person, and I think that sort of patience is an important thing. Coming back on to that, that 1 to 3 year piece that's quite interesting, and in fact the industry as a whole, is retention is an issue. Yep. Churn is an issue in recruitment. I think the industry averages, you'll know better than I, but run around 40-50%. Yeah, shocking. Now that's an industry average, and obviously in some places it's a lot bigger. You put stats in here about the number of people who leave with the industry within the first year, which is also shockingly high. Yeah, and it's worse than that since that's printed as well. Yeah, so it's now closer to 1 in 3 makes it. Yeah. Only 1 in 3 makes it beyond the first 12 months. Which is expensive to get wrong for the industry, and the worst part of it is there are now 66% of people who started in the industry who are going out and bad mouthing the recruitment space about what's not great about it, and that's been one of my bugbears for ages. Me about too. How people see the industry and how people in the industry see themselves as well. So I think it's a really important thing to get right. Why do you think there's so much churn in recruitment? Well, I think the beauty and the horror of what we do is there's no barriers to entry. Right? So anyone can come and have a go, which is great, but it's also terrible. Yeah. Because one of the biggest things that affect us, quite aside from some of our own issues around how well we assess and train, that person doesn't know whether they want to be a recruiter yet. Yeah. It's not a really defined career path like other things. It's hard to research and understand. Yeah. So actually, you only really know what it's like once you're in it. And because it's so painful to find good people, we default to this position that it's easier to find trainees. It's not. Yeah. It feels easier at the start. There's some really interesting stats in that as well, isn't it? And I would urge anyone to do their own numbers on this, because the numbers are actually really shocking if you actually sit down and do them. Yeah. But, it feels easier because it's easier to get people in a room to interview. Yeah. But the reality is it's a huge time drain. It's a huge financial, resource that you have to put into it. And very few make it out the other end at the end of year 1. Yeah. The problem is because we are we know how painful it is to find other people, we can sit on people that we know really early aren't cut out for it.
Yeah. Yeah, that sort of sunk cost fallacy aspect, isn't it, in terms of what we do. I mean, it's really interesting you come onto that, where you talk about the experienced hire conundrum against the sort of juniors, and juniors can be people who've been doing something in sales for 20 years or graduates or school leavers or whatever it might be. And our thing was quite interesting about that, and I think it comes down to your training program behind it as well. So
definitely.
we've got a real blend of both, and we had a sales board meeting this morning. We talked about whether we should be looking at more experienced people or less experienced people. The interesting thing is the experienced people will start off quicker, and in that first 6 months you're more likely to see return from people who've been doing it for obvious reasons than those who haven't. But quite quickly the field levels, and I think that's about how if you're going to invest in people and say, right, okay, there's your desk and get on with it and good luck, then you're going to be in trouble. But if you've got a program that puts people through something and can give them professional development, within 6 to 12 months they can be at a level par with people who've been in the industry for a little while, and you can also then have the DNA of your business really instilled into it. But I found it very, very interesting to see what you were putting in there about the statistics behind it and the sort of financial areas of how many people you can have.
Yeah, I mean, I just think I think there's different times of your growth as a company that it's more appropriate to bring in trainees than others.
Yeah.
And I think the startup recruitment agency, by far the best and most profitable and best sort of way to recruit is to find a couple of people that that will come in with you. That mid-range, when you're in that sort of 12 to 50 spot, you need people that have got at least 1 year, if not 3 years experience. Yeah. Okay, that is your quickest route to profit and growth. But once you're over that 50 headcount, you can actually have a mix, depending on the needs of your emerging managers and what they can cope with. But I think one of the errors we quite often make, and I know you've got quite a structured program here, which is quite unique actually compared to most firms, but experienced hires need support. And I think one of the issues some people have, and there is this myth that a lot of companies think that, one, it's hard to find recruiters, but also then experienced recruiters struggle to adapt, is that they just let them in, give them a desk,
and say good luck, and
that's it. And actually, this is this massive asset. This is someone that's obviously proven and has billed 200, 300, 400k a year somewhere else. They're almost worth more of your support in the first few months than a trainee who's going to take a lot longer. Yet quite often they come in to a messy desk, the drawers haven't been emptied from the last occupant, right? They haven't got their logins all organised. We're not even getting the basics right in a lot of companies.
Onboarding's so important, isn't it?
So I think, depending on where you are in your period of growth as a company, different options are better for you at that time.
It's also interesting you talk there about people coming in, because I think people make mistakes on experienced hires based off what they've done in the company before, not based off them. So you look at, I think about some of the people I've worked with who are big billers and look at how they build that sort of stuff, and is it based off the account? I know this sounds obvious, but it's so often.
It's context, isn't it?
Yeah, and look, we've made mistakes. I won't lie about that at various stages, based off the CV of the individual.
And recruiters know how to interview.
It's an incredible.
They know how to talk a good game.
Exactly.
So you have to have a way more robust. It's really difficult, but you need a way more robust interview process. The problem with that is it can't feel aggressive or combative.
No.
It has to engage them and make them feel good. But actually, what you've got to do is get into scenarios. And people that can talk in detail and with heart about scenarios they've been through to help them win, whether it's clients or candidates or get deals or whatever. They're the guys that will be able to adapt with you. The guys that haven't got the substance behind it and can't get into detail about how they manage that scenario, they're the guys that are just talking a good game. But actually most people, again, we've never been taught how to interview recruiters.
Well, it's the classic style-based interviewing sort of thing, isn't it? When you put it in there, it's again comes back down to simple things being done well, identifying what you want to have in someone, and then really going through. But a really important part of this, I thought, was no matter whether they're going to sign for you or not sign for you, whether they're going to be part of your business or not, is to have that great impression of it. And I think back to the interrogation that I first got in my first day in recruitment, and it was torch in the face sort of interrogation.
Sell me a pen.
And I actually I remember being beaten up through that process, and for me it was there that, glutton for punishment or whatever it might be, I wanted to join it even more because of that, to prove a point. But I can imagine how many people were in that situation and then didn't want to be anything.
Depends what your chip is.
That.
Everyone's got a chip of some sort, haven't they? So I would be like you, because my chip is about proving myself to the world. So I would be like, locked in, now I'm going to have to prove to you that I can do it.
Yeah.
But actually that would repel probably 80-90% of people.
And that's the thing, and how many people do we lose from that as well? There's something that sort of screams from the book is your passion and love for the recruitment industry, and it's great to see. And I think that's one of the key things behind anyone who's good at recruitment for a sustainable period is you've got to love it to do it really well. Tell us quickly why you love recruitment.
Because I think for me, growing up in a working class family and just wanting more for my life, but equally having been through quite a lot of trauma at a young age and being quite naturally empathic for other people, wanting to help other people, it's a meaningful way of doing something where you can influence and be the master or mistress of your own destiny.
Yeah.
So for me, I didn't know I wanted to be a recruiter until I saw it.
Yeah.
And then I had my light bulb moment when this
and
is
it was
what
always
I'm
like
to do.
that for you straight away.
I could never do anything else.
Yeah.
I love what I'm, 21 years in now.
Yeah.
I will always love recruitment. I will always be in recruitment. There will never be anything else I do that isn't recruitment related because I get to be part counsellor, part business person, part entrepreneur, influencer, marketer.
It's got so many different areas to it, hasn't it?
But I'm in control all the time. I get out exactly what I put in, no more, no less.
Yeah. And I love that. It's just the lens that people see things through, isn't it? For some people, the job is, a robotic job where you do the same sort of thing, pick up the phone time and time again.
I would hate that.
And then for other people, it is, here's a bit of marketing, here's a bit of entrepreneur. There's so many. I think there's so many layers to the job when it's done with that mixture of art and science as you talk about, and it can become a great thing to do. I'm going to ask you one last question, and obviously you and I could be talking for several hours on this sort of thing. But I'm going to ask you one last question and discipline myself around that. If you could talk to someone who's coming into the industry or someone who's in the industry and give them one bit of advice, what would that bit of advice be?
Oh, just one. Well, for an absolute newcomer.
If you want it to be for an absolute newcomer.
I'm going to give you two because I
Good.
can't do it right. So for a newcomer, I would say look for someone in this new company that you're joining that can be your mentor, and go and ask them to be your mentor. So pick the most successful person in the room that has similar values to you and buy them lunch in your first couple of weeks and say, I want you to be my mentor. Please will you help me be as good as you are? I've never known anyone to say no to that proposition. And what you'll do is you'll shortcut so many hacks and tips and tricks, and that person will look after you. I have never known it not to work. So for a newcomer, that's my number one piece of advice. For an experienced recruiter, I would say figure out what you want to be worth. So if you want to be worth £1 million, if you want to be worth 500k, if you want to be worth 100k, figure out what your number is, and then work out how many hours in the week you are putting into your work. That is your value per hour. And then anything you invest your time in, put that value to it. And is that thing worth your time? And will it pay you back that or more? And if it won't, don't do it. Because I think recruiters, if they're going to fail anywhere early on, it's they invest their time in the wrong places.
Well, not even early on. I think that's the case all the way through, isn't it? It's work what pays. That's
very easy to react to things that are happening instead of thinking, well, if this is my mission and this is what I want to achieve, how and when do I invest my time? Which gives you that power to say no to the wrong kind of clients and to very gracefully say no to the wrong type of candidate and to say no to the wrong type of career opportunity.
I mean, on a purely commercial level, it is every CV that you send, every interview that you book, and every job that you pull will have a value to it. And it's quite easy. It's quite an easy metric to work out. And so if you suddenly start to think of it in those sort of terms, and you're working out, right, if I'm sending X amount of CVs per week, and they're able to be worth X to me every time I do that, and I'm then investing into the wrong areas or investing into the wrong job, quality, quantity, direction, mentality, the four things that I think make or break someone in recruitment. Yeah, 100% agree with you.
Yep.
It's a really important aspect to do. So.
Don't wait to be at their level to adopt that attitude. I think that's the problem most recruiters have, is they don't think that way until they're there, in which case they never get there.
Yeah.
Like, you have to think that way now.
Definitely. Tara, it's been fantastic talking to you.
It's been great. I can't believe the time's gone already.
Well, I'm sure we can do more in the series,
definitely.
make a whole series of them as we come through. I'd love to talk to you again, and thanks so much for writing this. It's generally a great read. So thanks for coming on board. Good to see you. Thanks to all of you for watching, and we'll see you on another episode of Recruiter 360 TV very soon. Thank you.